Have you ever wondered why we continue shooting photos when we already have a million yet to be viewed photos at home? Or why we struggle to be present yet constantly live in the past or in the future? Or what about this one? Why we take major chances every day, like crossing the road, when the risk is far higher than the value? These questions may seem unrelated, but they're not. Surprisingly, they boil down to one single question and one answer, which you'll find out right now. An advertising executive once was quoted saying, "When you reach for the stars, you may not quite get one, but you won't come up with a handful of mud either." Today is all about reaching the stars. Welcome everyone to Newsweek and Why Do We? I'm Martin Lindstrom, author of The Ministry of Common Sense. And with me, I have the iconic Liza Donnelly. If you recall those amazing drawings in the New Yorker at the Oscars or Emmys, then you know Liza. Hi, Liza.
Hi, Martin.
Listen, I'm so excited, aren't you?
I am so excited. This is going to be a great conversation. I can't wait to hear it.
So tell me, why do you think we believe without question that there are billions of stars in the universe, but put up a wet sign, paint sign, and we have to check it ourselves?
Well, yeah, I think people are just curious. First of all, they're curious about the beautiful stars we see outside all the time. And then they're curious about the wet paint sign. Is it really wet? Can I touch it? That's something that we can control in our lives, whether or not to touch the wet paint sign, but we can't control what's out there.
Well, I'm not going to give you an answer to what I think it is because because my guest has commanded spacecrafts, escorted Soviet bombers out of the Canadian airspace, and lived in a research vessel at the bottom of the ocean. Go figure, right? His name is, of course, Chris Hadfield, a heavily decorated astronaut, engineer, and pilot. Hadfield's many awards include the Order of Canada and the NASA Experiential Service Medal. He was named the top test pilot in both the US Air Force and the US Navy. He has flown 3 space missions, building 2 space stations, performing 2 spacewalks, and commanding the International Space Station. And if this is not enough, you think this is crazy, right? He's also the author of 3 international bestsellers, An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth, You Are Here, and The Darkest Dark, plus a new thriller novel recommended by, listen to this everyone, this is crazy, by James Cameron, of course, right? And then we have James Patterson, of course, right? Why not, right? The Apollo Murders, and it's out this fall, I believe. Welcome, Chris, to Why Do We?
It's my pleasure, Liza and Martin. I'm glad to be joining you both, and I've really been looking forward to this conversation myself.
Well, listen, Chris, is that resume fake? Because, seriously.
I wasn't like trying to set out to do all those things. It's just like I kept kind of, what do I want to do next? That looks interesting. Let's do that.
Now, tell me one thing. There's a big difference between that dream and then realizing one moment this is real. How many years went by before you realized this is no longer a dream?
Well, it's not like just a finger snap. Because the difference between Superman and Neil Armstrong was pretty small in my mind. Neil Armstrong wasn't a guy who, slept at night, went to the bathroom and made dumb mistakes and had to cut his grass. Neil Armstrong was a superhero, And so it took years and I took baby steps, but eventually I started, making concrete decisions so that hopefully in the future I could be picked as an astronaut.
So one small step at a time. I remember that quote somewhere. I don't know where it's from, but tell me.
I purloined that. I didn't make that up.
Exactly, that's the one. Tell me about I got my driver license when I was 18. You didn't get your driver license first, right? What was it you got before, just earlier than you
Well,
got?
yeah, when I was looking at, when you're a little kid, you're going, okay, I want to fly in space. What do I need to do? I went, well, shoot, fly. And the summer that I turned 16 years old, I was already soloing airplanes before I was 16. And on my 16th birthday, as you say, before I had a license to drive a car, I had a little slip of paper that said I was legal to go fly airplanes. And I could fly before I could drive.
It's funny because I have a philosophy that if you walk over the street and there's a car bumping into you and you fly in the air and you have 3 seconds to rethink your entire life backwards, I want to end my last word by saying, or sentence by saying, I did everything I wanted to do. Have you gotten to that point? Everything is a bonus now? Are you sort of feeling that you're only halfway through that extreme, amazing career you've made so far?
I think we're different, Martin, because if a car bumped into me and I was flying through the air, I would be thinking a lot about landing. And what position should I get my body into, and how can I alter my trajectory, and how can I protect my vital organs so that I'm going to survive this thing? Because I was, as you mentioned in that long, laborious introduction, I was a test pilot, and test pilots are pretty often tumbling through the air, and you think a lot about how to recover from it.
I'm amazed by how you are flicking between being highly rational and also very emotional, or almost like a poet, right? First of all, give me a sense of, let's just take one side of that story. When you go up on a space mission, give me a sense of how rational, how planned, how calculated everything are. What are some of the disciplines you have to go through, just to give everyone watching a sense of that?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I was an astronaut for 21 years, and I basically studied 7 days a week and did homework at night for 21 years in order to be ready to operate a thing as complicated as a space shuttle or a space station or a Soyuz. Maybe here's an example, Martin. When I was hired as an astronaut, Russia, the Soviet Union was just ending, and Russia was emerging from that, and we decided that Russia was now going to be part of the International Space Station. So there I am, a brand new baby astronaut, and I thought, oh, Russia is going to be part of the program, and they've got, they were the first people in space. They got a big legacy. I need to learn to speak some Russian, and so I studied Russian starting at the beginning. I studied Russian for 20 years. And then once I had studied Russian, then that was allowing me then to start studying the Russian technology. And then I could train to maybe fly a Russian spaceship. And then I had to learn to speak Russian well enough to then learn orbital mechanics. And then train in the simulators for years, and then get in the actual vehicle and then fly lying on my back and focusing away from everything else in the world as the clock ticks down to those last few seconds.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, remaining start, 2, 1, booster ignition, and lift off.
And the engines start lighting. And the only thing that matters in the whole world right then is, were you ready or not?
How extraordinary. So, in contrast, the re-entry, May 2013, what were you wearing under your spacesuit there?
We had a family tradition that we support the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I sat on my dad's knee as a little boy on the couch watching the Toronto Maple Leafs in all their glory. We were in our spaceship, our little Soyuz spaceship, undocking from the International Space Station and about to come down through the atmosphere and land back on Earth. And I was like, when I climbed into my spacesuit, the last thing I heard was Toronto was ahead. And I was thinking, well, how can I possibly support the team from up here? And I brought up to space a Leafs t-shirt. So I thought, we're supposed to wear special cosmonaut gear under my spacesuit, but what the heck? What are they going to do? Fire me? So I put my Leaf shirt on underneath my spacesuit, my little Russian Sokol suit. And then we banged down into the Earth and tumbled and rolled to a stop, and they dragged us out of the ship, and they plunked me in a deck chair, and they handed me a sat phone. And they said, it's your wife. You can talk to your wife. And I said, hey, Helena, how you doing? And she said, oh, I'm so sorry. And I said, what do you mean you're so sorry? She said, the Leafs lost. That was my welcome back to Earth.
Fantastic. Does superstition play a role in your life when you're up there preparing?
I kind of look at it and think, why? Why do we have superstitions? And I think part of it is to give us comfort and to make us feel brave when we don't maybe have any good reason to feel brave. And there's a funny example. On the way out to the launch pad back in April of 1961, the very first human being to fly in space, talk about feeling helpless, Yuri Gagarin. He was about to go get into a rocket and leave the Earth for the first time ever. And rockets were still pretty new then, and they blew up a lot. But Yuri was out on the way to the launch pad, and they said all their formal goodbyes and saluted the general and everybody. And then the bus sort of went down into a hollow where nobody could see it. And Yuri said, hey, stop the bus, you know. And they stopped the bus, and he ran outside and undid his spacesuit because he had to pee. So he peed in the right rear tire because then there was a little bit of privacy. Fine. And then he got back inside feeling much, much better. And, you know, they redid up his spacesuit, and he launched for space, and he was successful. He survived that first space flight. And so the next cosmonaut that was on their way out to the launch pad, they're like, I want to be as successful as Yuri. What did Yuri do now? Oh, yeah. Okay. And so the bus stopped in the same spot, and he went out and peed in the same spot.
Listen, this brings me to the question, right? Which is, of course, a question about why do we believe in billions of stars when we really can't touch them, yet that sign of wet paint, we don't believe it and we had to touch it ourselves. What is the reason why?
I think there's a few reasons. One of them is, I think, nobody likes having someone else just force an idea down their throat. You know that standard human response, you're not the boss of me. And so when you see a sign that says wet paint, you're like, is it really wet paint? Who am I going to try? I don't even know who stuck this sign here. And even if it was wet paint, it might be dry by now. I'm going to go check because I think it's, you feel a sense of individualism. But when you're looking up at the stars, it's a constant, beautiful canopy that is there every night that there's not cloud, and it never goes away. And as everybody knows, that paint dries. So the sign should really read, a while ago, this was wet paint, but it might be dry now. That's what the sign really means, right?
There must have been a lot of thoughts going through your mind through that whole period. Just give me a reflection of what did you think when you looked at that tiny 4.5 billion year old planet?
You're gobsmacked. You are stunned by how beautiful the world is. I can tell you that. It's like telling you, yeah, sunsets are beautiful. Beethoven's Ninth. It's beautiful. But that doesn't do it justice. You got to listen to it or look at it. I've been around the world 2,600 times, or 2,650, and somewhere in there, you start to actually see the world, and not just the raw beauty of it, but you start to see the scars on the surface, the ancient nature of it. You can see, a 250 million year old meteor impact scar, or you can see how the continents, how they fit together. If it only takes 6 or 7 minutes to get from, Brazil to the edge of Africa, then you go, oh, shoot, that's like a jigsaw puzzle. Obviously, they used to fit together. So I got to see the snow and the green swap ends on the world. And I realized that over those 5 or 6 months, what I was looking at was the world taking one inhalation, one breath out of 4.5 billion breaths. Yeah, the Aral Sea was the 4th biggest sea on Earth, an inland, almost in a small inland ocean, gigantic, the Aral Sea. And of course, it builds an entire ecosystem around all of that water. On my first flight, the Aral Sea was still largely there and largely healthy. By my third space flight, because of human decision making, we had essentially dried the Aral Sea up to just, what from space looks like a stinking little puddle. In really one generation, because of human decision making, we changed the climate on an international scale of that part of the world so rapidly that just in astronauts' photographs, you can track the radical change. And it now sits there. If aliens came to the Earth, they would go, ooh, boy, bad decision, humans. But one of the things I learned on board a spaceship is that we are all in this together, and the world is very finite.
Chris, do you think we will survive all this? I mean, we have pandemics on planet Earth right now, which I think is taking a lot of attention and it's generating an enormous amount of fear on planet Earth. Seen in your perspective, what's your take on that?
It's really hard for me to understand what problems my great-great-great-grandmother was facing. The world pandemic of 1919, it killed 3% of everybody on Earth. And you sure don't have to go very far before that, where you go back like 200 years. The year 1800, 50% of everybody died as a child. Half of everybody succumbed to the diseases that killed children. Half of everybody. So this is nothing new. The hard part is admitting it and recognizing that we actually have to put our shoulder to the wheel and deal with the problems of today, just like everybody else did in the past.
So when you are floating up there and David Bowie is in the air and 100 million people are watching you, your true mission of doing that, what is the message you're trying to convey then?
When I was on board the International Space Station, I said to my son, hey son, what should I tweet about? And he said, why don't you ask everybody what they want you to take a picture of? And so I sent out a note on Twitter, said, hey, everybody, what do you want me to take a picture of? And I got responses, thousands of responses from all around the world. And I thought it was delightful because almost everywhere people said, I want a picture of my hometown, of where they lived. And at first I thought that was kind of quaint and parochial. But then I was thinking, people are proud of where they're from. And they want to see how they fit in to the rest of the world. And it's common to all of us. As I was floating on the space station and looking at the world and, listening to Mr. David Bowie's visions of what this was going to feel like, what I was really struck with was the absolutely shared nature of being human. And no matter where you are and where you were born and what your parents taught you as you grew up as your particular cultural normal, everybody fundamentally wants the same thing. They want some health and a chance to laugh and a little bit of grace and better opportunities for their children. And, that's what we're all really after. We go about it different ways, but it just reinforced to me that on this little blue spaceship, floating through the blackness of the universe, all of us breathing out of one bubble of air, we are truly in this together. And if there's any way that I can share my perspective, whether it's playing Space Oddity or sending a tweeted picture or whatever, or writing a book about it, then that would be a wonderful benefit from the incredible privilege that I had of being one of the world's astronauts.
What an amazing note to wrap up on. Chris, it's been an absolutely honor to interview you. I just want to, before you go, I'm curious to see what Liza thinks about it. Liza, what are the essence you're taking out of what Chris has been telling? Some thoughts have gone through your mind as you flick through the drawings, I noticed.
I feel at once humbled by space and hearing Chris talk about space, and yet so optimistic about the world. And it's a wonderful, I feel like I've just been in a class of philosophical astronomy. And I love it. I just love the big picture, small picture.
That once again, I think Leo Burnett was right when he talked about if you don't reach for the stars, you'll end up with a handful of mud. And if there's one thing you've done, then it's for reaching the stars. Thank you so much for joining us on Why Do We? I'm not sure I'm convinced about the answer, but I think it's a heck of better than anyone else on planet Earth. And that's a pretty good start, right? Thanks, everyone. And thanks for watching this show. We'll be back next week with another Why Do We, if you dare to watch, and take us on a ride into the orbit. Take care. Bye for now, everyone. Thank you.